What happens aback, the best capricious above admiral meets one of backward night's sharpest tongues, and neither one is accommodating to a back down. Tonight, we're breaking bottomward the atomic account that concluded with Aegis actuality alleged and a bedfellow actuality escorted out of the Ed Sullivan Theater. This is the chat that anybody is talking about. The moment that beyond every bandage and the barter that accustomed some interviews should never happen. Before we get into it, accomplish abiding you hit that subscribe button and beat a animate version beneath cogent us whose ancillary you're on, because assurance me, your activity to acquire an assessment about this. Let's dive in. The admirers was already electric aback Stephen Colbert absolved out-assimilate his stage. You could feel article altered in the air that night. The backward appearance admirers knew who was advancing, and the activity was breach-appropriate bottomward the middle. Bisected, the army was accessible to cheer, the added bisected accessible to jeer. Colbert did his accustomed aperture monologue, landing his jokes with surgical precision, but anybody knew what they were absolutely cat and mouse for. Aback, he assuredly alien his guest, the acknowledgement was deafening. Some bodies stood and applauded. Others sat in adamant silence. A few alike booed. Donald Trump absolved out in his signature aphotic clothing and red tie, bouncing to the army like he was entering a rally, not a backward night allocution show. They befuddled hands. The affectionate of handshake that lasts aloof additional too long, area both men are acutely allocation anniversary added up. Trump sat down, adapted his jacket, and before Colbert could alike ask his aboriginal question, he was already talking. That's how it started. Trump leaned aback in his chair and said, "You know, Stephen, I've been on a lot of shows. A lot of absolutely abundant shows, and I acquire to say, your ratings acquire been attractive, appealing, acceptable lately. Not as acceptable as aback I was president. Nothing got ratings like that, but appealing good." The admirers laughed nervously, borderline if it was a acclaim or an insult. Colbert smiled. That bound smile he does aback he's about to acreage a adverse punch, and said, "Well, acknowledge you, Mr. President. Or should I say, Mr. Above President. I acknowledge you noticing, admitting I acquire to admit. My ratings were never absolutely as acceptable as your acknowledged bills." The admirers erupted. Trump's announcement didn't change, but you could see article beam in his eyes. He acicular Colbert and said, "See, that's funny. That's the affectionate of a fair bodies apprehend from you. Complete clever. But let me acquaint you something, and this is true. Every case, every distinct one, it's all politically motivated. You apperceive it, I apperceive it, anybody knows it. They're aggravating to stop me because they're afraid. Abashed of what I represent, abashed of the movement, abashed that I'm activity to win again." Colbert leaned forward, his elbows on his desk, and said, "Okay, but let's allocution about what you represent. You represent a moment in American history area, facts became optional. Area accuracy became whatever you said it was on any accustomed day. How do you acknowledge to the bodies who say that you fundamentally damaged the assurance Americans acquire in their institutions?" Trump befuddled his head, that dismissive activity he's acclaimed for. He said, "Institutions? Let me acquaint you about institutions. The institutions were burst connected afore I got there. I aloof had the adventuresomeness to say it out loud. The media, absolutely corrupt. The intelligence agencies, absolutely corrupt. Alike the acclamation systems in some of these states. We saw what happened. Bodies don't assurance institutions because institutions chock full alive for them. Stephen, I didn't accident anything. I appear the damage." Colbert attempt aback immediately. "Or you created anarchy and afresh claimed you were the alone one who could fix it. That's not revelation. That's arson. You can't bake bottomward accessible assurance and afresh advertise yourself as the firefighter." The temperature in the allowance was rising. Trump sat up straighter and said, "I created the greatest abridgment in the history of this country. Unemployment at almanac lows, banal bazaar at almanac highs. We had it all. Afresh the communicable came, which came from China, by the way. Cipher wants to allocution about that anymore, but it's true. And we handled it as able-bodied as anyone could have. I adored millions of lives with the vaccines, which I don't get abundant acclaim for. And afresh, what happened? They blanket the election. Colbert interrupted. They didn't abduct the election. You lost. You absent the accustomed vote twice. You absent the balloter college. You absent 60 cloister cases aggravating to prove fraud. At what point does accident aloof beggarly losing? Trump's articulation got louder. He said, we won that acclamation and anybody knows it. You attending at the irregularities, the mail and ballots, the acclamation harvesting, the machines, all of it. We had added votes than any sitting admiral in history, Colbert said. And Joe Biden had added votes than any applicant in history. That's how algebraic works. That's how capitalism works. The being with added votes wins. Trump laughed, but there was no amusement in it. He said, you absolutely acquire that. You absolutely anticipate that a guy who couldn't get 50 bodies to appearance up to his rallies, who spent the complete advance in his basement, accurately got added votes than me. I had crowds like Cypher as any time seen. Tens of bags of people. Hundreds of thousands. Area where Biden's crowds? Stephen Colbert advances easily and said, maybe they were at home watching on television, amusing break during a pandemic. You bethink the pandemic, right? The affair that dead over a actor Americans, Trump said. And I gave them the vaccine in almanac time. Operation Warp Speed, one of the greatest achievements in medical history. But does the media elocution about that? Do you elocution about that? No. You'd rather allocution about January 6th. You'd rather allocution about nonsense. Colbert's articulation sharpened. He said, January 6th isn't nonsense. January 6th was an advance on the Capitol. Bodies died. Police admiral were assaulted. Your supporters approved to stop the acceptance of an acclamation because you told them it was stolen. Trump acicular at him and said, I told them to affably and patriotically accomplish their choir heard. Those were my exact words, affably and patriotically. But Cypher shows that clip, do they? They appearance aggregate else. They aberration everything, but they don't appearance the allotment area. I said be peaceful. Colbert said, you additionally told them to activity like hell, or they wouldn't acquire a country anymore. You told them the acclamation was chic for months. You summoned them to Washington on that specific day. Words acquire after effects, and your words led to violence. Trump said, my words. What about the words of every Democrat who spent 4 years adage Russia blanket the acclamation in 2016? What about Hillary Clinton who still says the acclamation was baseborn from her? What about Stacey Abrams? Why is it acquire a back they catechism elections but not a back I do? The admirers was absolutely bashful now, watching this barter like a tennis bout area the brawl keeps accepting hit harder and harder. Colbert said, because there's a aberration amid analytic-specific Aborigine abolishment tactics, and claiming that millions of afflicted votes were bogus out of attenuate air, afterwards evidence. You had your day in court, dozens of canicule in court, and you absent every distinct time, Trump said, because the courts didn't appetite to blow it. They didn't appetite to get involved. A like board I appointed, they didn't appetite to attending at the affirmation because they were scared. Anybody was afraid of what would appear if they told the truth, Colbert said. Or maybe there was no accuracy to tell. Maybe you absent fair and above board, and you couldn't acquire it because you've never been able to acquire accident at annihilation in your complete life. Trump stood up slightly, not fully but abundant that you could see his anatomy accent changing. He said, I've accustomed affluence of losses, Stephen. I've had business deals that didn't assignment out. I've had setbacks. Anybody has. But this wasn't a loss. This was a theft. And the actuality that bodies like you accumulate blamed this narrative. Accumulate aggravating to gaslight the American bodies into cerebration that what they saw with their own eyes didn't happen. That's the complete crime. Colbert stood up to abaft his board and said, what did they see with their own eyes? What specific affirmation are you talking about? Because I'm allurement you appropriate now on this appearance in advance of this audience. Acquaint us one allotment of accurate affirmation that proves the acclamation was stolen. Trump said there are bags of affirmation from poll workers who saw irregularities. There are videos of acclamation counting continuing afterwards assemblage were told to leave. There are algebraic impossibilities in the vote counts. Colbert said affirmation aren't affirmation if they can't be verified. The videos acquire been debunked. The algebraic impossibilities are aloof you not compassionate how vote counting works. This is absolutely the problem. You accomplish claims that complete serious but aback anyone absolutely investigates them, they abatement apart. Trump's face was red now. He said they abatement afar because Cipher wants to investigate them properly. You're accomplishing it appropriate now. Your absolution aggregate afterwards alike attractive at it. This is why Americans don't assurance the media anymore. Colbert said, I'm not the media. I'm a comedian, but alike I apperceive that aback 60 judges, including board you appointed, all say there's no evidence. Maybe there's no evidence, Trump said. So, your aloof activity to booty their chat for it? You're not activity to catechism anything? That's not journalism, Stephen. That's propaganda. The flat acquainted abate now, like the walls were closing in. You could see associates of the admirers alive uncomfortably in their seats. Some were affairs out their phones, already recording what they sensed was about to become a viral moment. Colbert's ambassador was continuing aloof off-date talking actively into his headset. Cipher had accepted the account to go this administration this quickly. Colbert took an animation and said, Let's allocution about article abroad then. Let's allocution about your business almanac back you accompany it up as a qualification. You filed for defalcation 6 times. You've been complex in bags of lawsuits. You've had assorted businesses fail, from casinos to stakes to a university that defrauded students. How is that a almanac to be appreciative of? Trump anon cursed back. I've congenital an empire, Stephen, an empire. I acquire barrio with my name on them all over the world. I've created bags of jobs, generated billions in bread-and-butter activity. The bankruptcies were accumulated restructurings, which is a absolutely accustomed business practice. I acclimated the laws that were accessible to anybody, and I acclimated them smartly. That's not failure, that's strategy. Colbert said, it's strategy. If you're the one walking abroad with money, while contractors and baby business owners don't get paid, there are endless belief of bodies you stiffed, bodies who did assignment for you and never got their money. How do you absolve that? Trump leaned back and said, in business, sometimes disputes happen. Sometimes the assignment isn't done properly. Sometimes there are disagreements about quality. That's why we acquire contracts. That's why we acquire courts. I've consistently operated oral the law. If addition acquainted they weren't paid fairly, they had every appropriate to accompany acknowledged action. Colbert's eyebrows attempt up. He said, so your aegis is that you afflicted working-class bodies to sue you to get paid for assignment they already did. That's not a defense. That's an admission. Trump said, you're a G at aloof like you aberration everything. I've paid out added money in salaries and affairs than you could possibly imagine. Millions and millions of bodies acquire benefited from my businesses. But you appetite to focus on a scattering of disputes. That's the botheration with bodies like you. You can't see the backwoods for the trees. Colbert said the scattering of disputes are complete animal beings who suffered complete consequences. They're not statistics. They're people, aloof like the bodies who abounding Trump University and absent their activity savings. Aloof like the bodies who invested in your companies and watched them collapse. At what point do you booty albatross for the accident you've done? Trump's jaw clenched. He said, I acclimatized the Trump University case for an atom of what they claimed with no acceptance of wrongdoing. That case was a political hit job by an adjudicator who had a battle of interest. As for investors, they knew the risks. That's what advance is. You win some, you lose some. I've had far added wins than losses, Colbert said. Except a back added bodies lose, you still assume to win. That's the pattern. A back your casinos went bankrupt. You still absolved abroad with millions while investors got crushed. A back the abridgment burst in 2008. Alive families absent their homes while you kept your penthouse. You don't allotment in the losses. You aloof allotment in the gains. Trump aciculared him again, his field jabbing the air. He said, I took risks that added bodies wouldn't take. I put myself on the bandage over and over again. You sit actuality in your adequate flat with your adequate bacon from your accumulated arrangement, and you adjudicator bodies who absolutely body things, who absolutely actualize things. What a choir you created, Stephen? What a choir you built. Colbert didn't absence a beat. He said, I've congenital a career on cogent the accuracy and captivation able bodies accountable. I don't charge a belfry with my name on it to apperceive I've done article worthwhile. Trump laughed. That acrid beam again. He said, You've congenital a career on account jokes added bodies address for you and biting bodies your admirers already hates. That's not courage. That's pandering. The admirers gasped. Some bodies started booing. Others started cheering. It was chaos. Colbert aloft his articulation to be heard over the noise. He said, I address my own material actually, but let's allocution about pandering. You've fabricated a career out of cogent bodies what they appetite to hear. Like a back, it's not true. You told atramentus miners their jobs were advancing. A back, you knew they weren't. You told accomplishment. Workers that factories would acknowledgement a back, you knew they wouldn't. You told bodies Mexico would pay for a bank that American taxpayers funded. How's that not pandering? Trump said, I fought for those workers every distinct day I was in office. I adjourned barter deals. I brought back accomplishment jobs. I put America first. Aloof, because the media didn't awning. It doesn't beggarly. It didn't happen. Colbert said the media covered it. The botheration is that aback we actuality arrested your claims, they didn't authority up. Accomplishment jobs connected to abatement during your presidency. The barter arrears with China got worse, not better. The bank never got congenital the way you promised. These aren't opinions. These are facts. Trump stood up absolutely now, aerial over the desk. He said, You appetite to allocution about facts? Here's a fact. I won in 2016 aback everyone, including you, said I had no chance. Here's addition fact. I got added votes in 2020 than any sitting admiral in history. Here's addition fact. The abridgment was roaring until China appear a virus on the world. Those are facts, Stephen. Aggregate abroad is interpretation. Core stood too, analogous is energy. He said, You accumulate adage China appear the virus like it was intentional. There's no affirmation of that. The Intelligence Association has said there's no affirmation of that. You're accomplishing it again. Your authoritative claims afterwards affirmation, and acquisitive bodies acquire you because you say it confidently. Trump said, the intelligence community. The aforementioned Intelligence Association that ARIA about weapons of accumulation abolition in Iraq. The aforementioned Intelligence Association that spied on my campaign. Your activity to assurance them, Colbert said. More than I assurance edition who lies every time he opens his mouth. Yes. The words afraid in the air for a moment. Trump's face went from red to about purple. He said, What did you aloof say to me? Kohler didn't back down. He said, I said you lie constantly, pathologically about big things and baby things, about things that amount and things that don't. You area about your army sizes. You area about your wealth. You aria about the election. You aria about the pandemic. It's the arrangement so able-bodied accurate that actuality checkers had to actualize new systems aloof to accumulate up with you. Trump took a footfall adjoin the desk. He said, You charge. To be complete accurate about what you say next, Stephen, Collar said, or what you'll sue me. You'll cheap about me. Oh, wait. You can't cheap anymore because you got banned for annoying violence. Trump's articulation dropped, accepting quieter, which somehow fabricated it added menacing. He said, I acquire been added than accommodating with you. I came on your appearance as the address to acquire a conversation, to accord your ratings a boost, and this is how you amusement me. This is how you amusement a above Admiral of the United States. Colbert said, I'm alleviative you absolutely how I amusement every bedfellow who comes on actuality and doesn't acquaint the truth. The appellation doesn't accord you amnesty from reality. Trump said, You are so smug, so self-righteous. You anticipate you're bigger than anybody else. You anticipate you're smarter than anybody else, but you're not. Your aloof addition boob adage what your accumulated masters acquaint you to say, Colbert said. And you're a con man who assertive bisected the country that you cared about them while you best their pockets. At Atomic, I'm honest about who I am. Trump said, honest you? You hid a BAFTA appearance for years on your old appearance assuming to be a bourgeois pundit. You fabricated millions biting people's behavior, and you appetite to allocution to me about honesty. Colbert said that was satire. It was acutely labeled satire. Anybody knew it was satire. Trump said, and how is that altered from what you allege me of doing? How is assuming to be addition you're not for money and acclaim any different? Kohler said, because I was authoritative a point about media abetment and political hypocrisy. I wasn't absolutely active for office. I wasn't absolutely authoritative action decisions that afflicted people's lives. You were the president, the complete president, and you advised it like a absoluteness show. Trump said, I advised it like the best important job in the world, which it is. And I did it bigger than any admiral in decades. Kohler befuddled his head. He said, you absolutely acquire that, don't you? You absolutely acquire your own hype. That's the alarming part. It's not that you're lying to us. It's that you ability acquire area to yourself so abounding times that you can't acquaint the aberration anymore. Trump said, I apperceive absolutely what I accomplished. I apperceive absolutely what I did for this country, and history will prove me right. Kohler said, history is accounting by bodies who amount accuracy over propaganda. You're not activity to like what history says about you. Trumps easily were arresting the bend of Colbert's board now, his Duke white. The admirers had gone from aflame to absolutely nervous. This wasn't ball anymore. This was article abroad entirely. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second. Trump said, you perceive what your botheration is, Stephen? Your botheration is that you alive in a bubble. You alive in this little New York balloon area, anybody thinks like you, talks like you, hates who you hate. You acquire no abstraction what complete Americans think. Kohler said, real Americans. As adjoined to what? Afflicted Americans. The bodies who alive in cities aren't real. The bodies who disagree with you aren't real. That's the best un-American affair you could possibly say. Trump said, I'm talking about the bodies who assignment with their hands, who body things, the bodies you and your company attending bottomward on. Kohler said, let's allocution about how you amusement people. You apish disabled reporters. You advance gold brilliant families. You abstracted accouchement from their parents at the border. How is any of that angry for complete Americans? Trump's articulation got loud again. He said, I never alleged veterans losers and suckers. That's a made-up story. I acquired done added for veterans than any admiral ever. As for the border, we had to accomplish the law. Every country has borders. Kohler said, every country has borders, but not every country puts accouchement in cages. Trump attempt back. Those cages were congenital by Obama. We affiliated that system. But you don't appetite to allocution about that, do you? Colbert said, I don't affliction who congenital them. I affliction who acclimated them. I affliction about the action that traumatized bags of accouchement as a deterrent. Trump said, what's atrocious is acceptance millions of bodies to cascade beyond the bound unchecked. What's atrocious is the drugs that appear beyond that bound and annihilate American kids. We had to be strong, Kohler said. Strong and atrocious aren't the aforementioned thing. Aggregate you do is affected for best absorption and best outrage, Trump said. An aggregate you do is affected to accomplish me attending bad. That's your accomplished career now, isn't it? Aloof advance, Trump. Advance, Trump. Advance, Trump. What are you activity to do? Aback, I'm gone, Stephen, Kohler said. I'll allocution about whoever is aggravating to attenuate capitalism appropriate now. That's you. It's not personal. It's principle. Trump laughed bitterly. He said, it's not personal. Aggregate about this is personal. You abhorrence me. Your accomplished admirers hates me. This accomplished burgle hates me. But don't pretend this is about principle. This is about contempt. Colbert said, you're right. I do acquire antipathy for you. I acquire antipathy for what you've done to this country. I acquire antipathy for how you've normalized lying. But that antipathy is earned. You becoming every bit of it. Trump took a footfall aback from the desk, attractive about at the audience. He said, "You bodies are all the same. You sit actuality and to claim aback he blame me, but I'm the one who fought for you. I'm the one who cut your taxes. I'm the one who brought jobs aback, and this is the acknowledgement I get." Some bodies and the admirers started shouting back. Addition yelled, "You fabricated our lives worse." Addition abroad yelled, "You're a liar." Trump, a secular, joined them. He said, "See, you can't alike acquire a chat anymore. Anybody is so abounding with hate?" Colbert said, "That's affluent advancing from you. You've spent years advancing anyone who disagrees with you. You alarm the columnist, the adversary of the people. You catechism the adherence of anyone who won't agreement complete adherence to you. And afresh you accuse about hate." Trump wheeled aback join him. He said, "I avert myself, Stephen. Aback you're attacked every distinct day by the media, by Hollywood, by the establishment. You acquire to activity back." Colbert said, "You're not a victim. You're one of the best able bodies in the world. Stop assuming you're some affectionate of martyr." Trump said, "You anticipate ability protects you from attacks? Anybody wants to booty you bottomward aback, you're successful. Anybody wants to see you fail." Colbert said, "Maybe body's appetite to see you abort because your success comes at added people's expense. Maybe body's basis join you because you're a bully." Trump's articulation went quiet again. That alarming quiet. He said, "I acquire never punched bottomward in my life. I go afterwards bodies who deserve it." Colbert said, "You went afterwards a 16-year-old altitude activist. You went afterwards the parents of a murdered child. Those bodies didn't appear afterwards you. You aloof couldn't advise yourself." Trump said, "I was responding to attacks. I was ambience the almanac straight." Colbert said, "A developed man doesn't charge to set the almanac beeline with a teenager. A admiral doesn't charge to advance clandestine citizens. It's weak. And abysmal down, you apperceive it's weak." Trump's face was angled now. He said, "You don't apperceive annihilation about me. You don't apperceive what I've sacrificed." Colbert said, "What acquire you sacrificed? Your Orient penthouse, your clandestine jet. Acquaint me what you've sacrificed that compares to what you've asked added bodies to cede for you." Trump said, "I gave up the abundant activity to be president. I gave up my business, my freedom, my privacy. I could acquire backward in New York, lived like a king, but I did it because I adulation this country." Colbert said, "You didn't accord up your business. Your kids ran it while you funneled government money into your properties. And you didn't do it for adulation of country. You did it for adulation of yourself. Aggregate you do is about agriculture your ego." Trump took addition footfall adjoin the desk. He said, "That's it. I'm done with this. I came actuality. In acceptable faith, and all you've done is advance me. This account is over." Colbert said, "You don't get to adjudge aback, the account is over." "You're on my show," Trump said. "Watch me." And he pulled off his microphone, the complete of it ripping away, alveolate through the studio. Colbert said, "That's perfect. Aloof storm off like you consistently do, a back addition challenges you. Run away." Trump angry back, his face inches from the camera. He said, "I'm not active from anything." This accomplished affair was a setup. You never capital a complete conversation. You aloof capital to abase me in advance of your audience. Colbert said it was accounted if alike one being watching this realizes who you absolutely are. Trump started walking adjoin the exit. Colbert alleged afterwards him, "That's right. Aloof leave. That's what you do best." Trump stopped, angry about one added time. He said, "I never accord up, and your admirers should apperceive that aggregate they aloof saw, this is what the media does. They attack, they distort, they lie." Colbert said, "The alone being who aria actuality tonight is you, and anybody knows it." That's a back he just confused in. As Trump headed for the door, one of the producers approved a footfall in advance of him, aggravating to calm the bearings down. Trump pushed accomplished him durably abundant that the ambassador stumbled. Aegis anon confused in to ample men in apparel who positioned themselves amid Trump and the exit. Trump said, "Get out of my way." The Aegis bouncer said, "Sir, we charge you to calm down." Trump said, "I am calm now. Move." The admirers was on their anxiety now, some of them filming on their phones. One of the Aegis guards put a duke on Trump's arm and Trump yanked it away. He said, "Do not blow me. I am above Admiral of the United States." The bouncer said, "Sir, you charged to leave the able way." Trump said, "I'll leave any way I want. This is America." The collision lasted maybe 30 seconds. Finally, the ambassador nodded to security. They stepped aside. Trump straightened his jacket, looked back at Colbert, and said, "Your activity to affliction this, Stephen." Afresh he was gone, dematerialization through the exit. The flat was in chaos. The bandage started playing. Colbert stood at his desk, attractive, shaken, but additionally energized. He said to the audience while that aloof happened, "Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump has larboard the building." The admirers erupted, bisected cheering, bisected booing, anybody talking at once. So that's what happened, a backward night host band to a back bottomward, and a above admiral band to a choir. He was wrong. That's what happened, a backwards became weapons, and an account became a confrontation. Subscribe to this approach if you appetite-added breakdowns like this and beat a animate version beneath cogent me. Did Stephen Colbert go too far? Or did he do absolutely what an announcer should do?